This video is just going to have some simple Linux commands, sort of just to sort of get one's feet wet. And I'm going to work on this www.tutorialspoint.com site that has like a Linux terminal. Okay, so the first thing that this exercise requests is that you run the date command. So I'm at this URL. I have a browser open at that URL. And here, over here, in this first pane over here, I'll call it, they just have like a list of some common commands. But over here, we're going to run the command. And I'm not seeing prompt right now, so you'll see what I mean by a prompt after I run a command. And then I'll probably run it again after I have a prompt. So I'm just typing in this second black pane here, date, and then it will do some various stuff and it will give me indeed the date. Um, but then now that I have this dollar sign, this prompt, I'm just going to run it again and get the sort of simpler output of just the date command. So if I typically have a prompt and then run some command, and then if there is output, it is also produced after the prompt, and then you get a sort of new prompt for one's next command. And so typically, if you don't get the prompt again, something's sort of still running, perhaps. Okay. So I ran this date command and it's telling me the date. And according to my computer, it's January 13th, but this is putting out January 14th. And then one of the questions here, so I can sort of, I'm not going to do all the screen captures or the typing explanations. I'm just going to speak them. But so here we saw the result, which was the date and time, January 14th, 5:27. Um, and the next question is, what is IST? And IST is India Standard Time. And so that's why we're not agreeing on the date or time, um, because they're ahead. Okay, so that was the first command, and that was what IST. Now I'm going to run the date command, but with this greater than sign, which I may often refer to as arrow, and then follow that by today.txt. And I got nothing. Let me try it again. Date and date today.txt. Okay, so when I ran just the command date, it spit out date in the command window in the terminal. But when I ran it with this greater than and then a name of this is going to be the name of a file, it is taking this output and rather than putting it on the screen, creating a file if it doesn't already exist, creating this file and putting this output in that file. And then it says run the command ls. And ls is telling me what is in I'm in some kind of file system here, and it's telling me what files and folders are in this what we call the current working directory. And that file that we just made, today.txt, is in there. So that is what the ls does. So date today.txt took the output of the date command and put it into a file today.txt, and ls then showed us that file in the directory. If we are to do ls minus a, this is the same ls command, but with additional options. And the A option is to sort of show us sort of like all the contents. So we can have things that are hidden or system files and so on. So things that one might not normally be shown, but if you do ls minus a, you are asking to see more. And this is some sort of emulated folder without sort of much of anything in it, but it all folders have this dot and double dot. And this is about sort of working within a directory system. So a dot refers to the directory you're in. So it's a way to reference where you are at. And file systems have a tree-like structure where there is some root, and then there are possible places under the root, and then there could be places within places, or subdirectories with subdirectories and directories, and subdirectories within subdirectories within directories within the root. So everything other than the root has a parent, and that's what the double dot means. So the double dot is a reference, not a named reference to the parent directory, but just a way to say that this directory has a parent, and we can, if we use double dot, we are referring to the parent directory of this file. Okay. Um, so that's what ls minus a did. Now we're asking to run the stat command on the file that we have made. So stat is a command that takes uh, a file as an argument. So we can have the date command could just sort of run by itself and did stuff. Stat is something that you wanted the stats of the properties of something. So you need to tell it the something. So I have stat today.txt, that file, and I'm getting a bunch of information about the file. Its size, the number of blocks, the I blocks, and so lots of properties. And we come to understand these properties when it was uh, accessed, when it was modified and changed. Um, I didn't ask, but there is a sort of data and metadata in a file. There's information about the file that's not its contents. So I think that's the difference between sort of modify and change. Have you made any changes to the content? Have you made any changes to the metadata? When have you last accessed the file? When was the file created? And everything's sort of pretty much the same here. Because we pretty much just made it. And then I'm asking a series of questions here just to get my students to look up things and learn things. So what do we have after inode is the fancy term, a data structure, but it's information um, about an object in the file system. So we need to be able to distinguish all the files and the folders in the file system, and so they are assigned numbers. So that is the inode. What is UID? So if you look up UID without any context, you might find out that it is like a unique identifier. Um, but you should usually, when you're trying to search for something, add context. So if you search this with the context of like Linux file, so these are the stats of a Linux file. So if you said, what's UID in the context of a Linux file, then you're going to find out that it is uh, an identifier for the user. So it's so it says how to find a UID of a user and change it. But the UID identifies a user. And then we also ask what the GID is. And that is about the group identifier. So there are users of the Linux, and then the users are considered to belong to groups. So this is how the The users are organized into groups. Sometimes you're in a group by yourself. You can be in more than one. A user can be in more than one group. Um, so a group can have more than one user, and a user can be in more than one group. But this is an association between the user and the group, and then to say there's a identification of like the rest of the world, the other. So we're going to say uh, a file can has is associated with a user, it's associated with a group, and then we will move on to like permissions, and we'll talk about what are the users permissions, what are the group's permissions to that file, what's the rest of the world's permissions. But so part of what stat told us was sort of who owns, what user owns this webmaster. So we are sort of sending this up to the web, and they're running it for us. So they are the user, and there is also a group webmaster. So when you have sort of simple users, there's often a group with the same name. And so the user ID is webmaster, and the group ID is also webmaster. And the users and the groups are also assigned numbers. Um, and so this user has an ID of 1000. And so same thing for the webmaster here. Okay. Um, and then this stat had this access code. Let's have a look at that. So there was this access, now up here, this access code up here. And this is coming back to that concept of user and group, and then people who aren't the user aren't the user and aren't in the user's group. And so there's sort of three sets of permissions here in this access. The R is read, and the W is write. And then the thing that you don't see, that's just a dash here, would be an X, it would be execute. So those are the main permissions, something that somebody can do with a file. They can see the contents of the file, they can read it, they might be able to change the contents of the file, that would be writing it. And if it's code, they might be able to execute it. And so this file, this today.txt file, the user, the sort of creator of this file, can read and write it, but not execute it. It's not code, so you're not holding back on anything. There's no reason to execute it. Um, the anybody else in that group, that's that second thing there, can read it, and the rest of the world can also read it. And what else have we got here? The 644. Well, in binary, 6 is 110, and 4 is 100. Let's bring up a calculator quickly and sort of show that to be sure. So here's some calculator. I'll move to programmer mode. 6 is 110, whereas 4 is 100. And that's just another way to do this. So this was 110, read, write. So I could read 1, I could write 1, but I couldn't execute. So 0, 1, 1, 0, that's a 6. 4 is I can read, but I can't write or execute. So this was 100. That's a 4. Okay. So we've answered that question. What does all that mean? We're going to run the command more today.txt. And more spits out the contents of the file. Let's run again. It's being a little funky. I think if I sort of delay too long, it's being a little bit funky with the prompt and giving me sort of more than just a simple prompt. but more, and then the name of a file gives you the contents of the file. So I'm the user or a webmaster, and I'm working as webmaster, is the user of the file and can run the command more and read the file and spit out its contents. That's what more does. When what did it mean to redirect a file? So we saw that in the beginning. We saw that date by itself spit stuff just out to the screen. So the command date has output, and the normal place for that output is back to the terminal. But we ran that command date and then like the greater sign and then today.txt. And then that output was sent to a different place to the file. So that is a version of redirecting or piping to sort of to push something in a different direction than its sort of default normal direction, normal place to. And what was the next? Okay. So now I'm asking what is the difference between date today and date arrow today. So let me run date today dot text. I'm going to run that again. Now it already exists, but I'm going to run the command again, and I'm going to use more to look at it. And we see now that the time has changed from what we had before. Before we had 5:29, now we have 5:43, still in Indian time. And so we've run the command again with and put it into today.txt. It didn't have to create the file, it already existed, but we would say that it overwrote the file. So it used to say 5:29, now it says 5:43. But now we're going to use two greater thans. Oops, .txt, and then run more again. And now we're going to see that it has the 43, but also 44. So we are redirecting the output of the date file to today.txt, which already exists, but we are this time appending. We are adding the new result of 544 to our previous result. So when we had the one greater than sign, we overwrote what we had. When we had two, we appended to what we had. And so that is that distinction. And I'm going to end this video there and then do more in another video.